Passover's coming up. According to, depending on how you follow the moon, how you interpret when the new moon is. Some people say it's the dark moon. Biblically, we teach that it is the bright moon, because that's when it was created, in the first day that it was created, in the fourth day. It started off bright. God created it to be a light. All right, so that's how we follow it. We follow it by the bright moon, and the spring moon begins the year, and we'll get into that a little bit. But I want to start in Exodus 12. That's where we'll start, and we'll be speaking on the Passover. All right. There's a lot to touch on when it comes to the Passover, but it's also not that much. So we'll see how long it takes. All right. To fully understand the Passover, you got to understand the plagues in Egypt, but we're not going to get into all the plagues, and I'm just wanting to check on if everything's running smoothly. It should be, but if not, we'll fix whatever needs to be done. To fully understand the Passover. Okay, all praise to the Most High. It seems like everything is going smoothly. So with that, as I was saying, to understand the Passover, you have to understand the plagues that was in Egypt. All right, and I guess we'll actually start with Exodus 11 to get an understanding of not just the plagues. We're going to skip the 9 plagues, but the last plague is where the Passover comes from. All right. So this is Exodus 11. I'm going to start with verse 1. And the Lord said unto Moses, Yet will I bring one plague more upon Pharaoh and upon Egypt. Afterwards he will let you go hence. When he shall let you go, he shall surely thrust you out hence altogether. He said, look, after this plague, Pharaoh's going to be begging you to leave. He's going to force you out. He did want to keep you here, and now he's going to force you out. Speak now in the ears of the people, and let every man borrow of his neighbor, and every woman of her neighbor, jewels of silver and jewels of gold. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians. Moreover, the man Moses was very great in the land of Egypt, in the sight of Pharaoh's servants, and in the sight of the people. Right? So when these Hebrews, God told the people, like, look, here's the spoils of war you're going to take. Just borrow. Just ask to borrow. Don't forcefully steal nothing from nobody, but ask to borrow, jewelry, gold, silver, whatever. All right. And Moses said, Thus saith the Lord, about midnight will I go out into the midst of Egypt, and all the firstborn in the land of Egypt shall die, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sitteth upon his throne, even unto the firstborn of the maidservant that is behind the mill, and all the firstborn of beasts. Right? So we like to think of, just the firstborn of the people. Firstborn of beasts died as well. Like everything. Everything died. Every firstborn, that is. Every firstborn died. All right? And there shall be a great cry throughout all the land of Egypt, such as there was none like it, nor shall be like it any more. But against the children of Israel shall not a dog move his tongue, against man or beast, that ye may know how the Lord doth put a difference between the Egyptians and Israel. You see that right there? So, even when the people will be mourning their dead, they're not going to turn on the children of Israel. All right? They're going to be mourning their dead, and they're going to be crying, but not one person or animal is going to turn on the children of Israel and say, you did this to me. That's not going to happen. All right? And all these thy servants shall come down unto me and bow down themselves unto me, saying, Get thee out. And all the people that follow thee, and after that I will go out. Right? So they're going to say, get out of here. All right? They're going to say, please leave, please get out. And he went out from Pharaoh in a great anger. You see that right there? So he was speaking this in the sight of Pharaoh, and obviously Pharaoh didn't like to hear these words. And the Lord said unto Moses, Pharaoh shall not hearken unto you, that my wonders may be multiplied in the land of Egypt. God said, look, this serves a purpose. All right? This is going to be the plague to let everybody know that I am the only true God. All right? And Moses and Aaron did all these wonders before Pharaoh, and the Lord hardened Pharaoh's heart so that he would not let the children of Israel go out of his land. He said right there, because it was all building up to this last plague. All right? He couldn't let him go before this last plague, because this last plague is the one that people remember. All right. And the Lord spake unto Moses and Aaron in the land of Egypt, saying, this month shall be unto you the beginning of months, right? The springtime. And we're going to read about that a little bit in the next chapter. It shall be the first month of the year to you. Speak ye unto all the congregation of Israel, saying, in the 10th day of this month they shall take to them every man a lamb, according to the house of their fathers, a lamb for a house, right? So you need lamb. And if the household be too little for the lamb, let him and his neighbor next unto his house take it according to the number of the souls. Every man according to his eating shall make your count for the lamb, right? So they said, look, if one lamb is too much, then share. All right. Your lamb shall be without blemish, a male of the first year. So a male without blemish, we know that represents Jesus Christ. All right. He shall take it out from the sheep or from the goats. Right. So if you didn't have no lamb, you could get goat. Excuse me. And ye shall keep it up until the 14th day of the same month. All right, the 14th day of the month, that is coming Sunday. All right, and the whole assembly of the congregation of Israel shall kill it in the evening. Right, so after the 14th day, the evening that follows that is technically the 15th day. All right. And they shall take of the blood and strike it on the two side posts and on the upper post of the upper doorpost of the houses, wherein they shall eat it. Right. So your house being covered in the blood of the Lamb. Again, this goes back to Jesus Christ. That's what it was all symbolic of, and we'll get that later on. But what I want to go back to, where it says. We know that the 14th day at even is the 5th day, and we'll get into that a little bit, but we know that because evening and morning were the first day. All right. It's not, 12 o'clock midnight. It's not in the morning, then the evening. No, the darkness was first, right? And God said, let there be light later, right? So that's how you know that the evening and then the morning, the nighttime and then the daytime is how God counts his days. All right. Because there was darkness first, and then he said, let there be light. That's the latter half of the day. All right. But anyway, verse 8, and they shall eat the flesh in that night, right? The 15th night of the month, which is the 14th day at even. All right. 14th day. And then that's the 15th night of the month. Eat it then. They shall eat the flesh in that night, roast with fire and unleavened bread. So you need the lamb and you need unleavened bread and you need the bitter herbs. They shall eat it. All right. Those are the components. We will see later. You can have more, but those are the three things that you need for this Passover meal. All right. Eat not of it raw, nor sodden at all with water, right? So you can't boil it, all right? And you can't eat it raw, obviously, but roast with fire. So that would be like grilling it, all right? His head with his legs and with the purtenance thereof. So that's a full lamb, right? If you got a full lamb, if you got a house that can eat up a full lamb, then you do the full lamb, the whole thing. And ye shall let nothing of it remain until the morning. Right, so there's no leftovers. So you can't I'm going to save it in the fridge. No. And that which remaineth of it until the morning ye shall burn with fire. Right, so if you have any leftovers, you got to get rid of them. You can't eat leftovers throughout the week. That's not how the Passover works. And thus shall ye eat it, with your loins girded, and your shoes on your feet, and your staff in your hand, and ye shall eat it in haste. It is the Lord's Passover. You see that right there? So the people of that time, they didn't have time to just sit back and savor the meal. They had to go. All right? They were going to end up being forced out of Egypt. They had to, eat it basically. I ain't going to add any words to it. It said with your shoes on your feet, your staff in your hand, and eat it quickly. All right. That's how they had to do it then. All right. For I will pass through the land of Egypt this night and will smite all the firstborn in the land of Egypt, both man and beast. And against all the gods of Egypt, I will execute judgment. I am the Lord, right? And so when you go into like the plagues were specifically against the gods of Egypt. They would say like, oh, you have a god of the sky and of the earth. Well, God, our God, the Hebrew God, just brought in hail from the sky and lightning, which is going to burn up all the ground, burn up all your crops. That's just an example of how there was hail mingled with fire, right? So that does away with your God Isis that you've been worshiping, because our God just showed that your God is nothing. All right. So that was against all the gods of Egypt that the Lord executed his judgment. And the blood shall be to you for a token upon the houses where ye are. And when I see the blood, I will pass over you. And the plague shall not be upon you to destroy you when I smite the land of Egypt. Right? So it was that night that the Lord claimed all the firstborn. All right? He would have done it to the Israelites too if they didn't put the, blood on the doorpost. That's why he told them, look, you can be covered by the blood of the Lamb. All right? And this day shall be unto you for a memorial, and ye shall keep it a feast unto the Lord throughout your generations. Ye shall keep it a feast by an ordinance forever. You see that right there? Forever. This ain't just, we come to the New Testament, now we can stop keeping it. Forever. All right? We'll get into that later in the New Testament. 7 days shall ye eat unleavened bread. You see that right there? So you got to eat unleavened bread for 7 days. All right? Even the first day, ye shall put away leaven out of your houses. You see that right there? So put away all of the leaven out of the house. That's one of the things I've been doing today, is figuring out what's got leaven in my house, what doesn't, trying to get rid of all that stuff. All right. It doesn't start until Sunday night. So even after the Sabbath, we still have one more day to get all things prepared. That's why I'm letting y'all know now. All right. Get all the leaven out of your houses. All right. For whosoever eateth leavened bread from the first day unto the seventh day, that soul shall be cut off from Israel. Meaning you're going to die. God's going to kill you. All right. Because the leaven, and we'll get this later in the New Testament, what the leaven actually represents. It's not just about cleaning out the bread from your house, all right? It's more to it than that. It represents something, all right? And again, we'll get that later on. And in the first day there shall be a holy convocation, and in the seventh day there shall be a holy convocation to you, gathered together. No manner of work shall be done in them, save that which every man must eat. That only may be done of you. Right? So if you dictate your own schedule, and there you go. The first day and the seventh day is the days to take off. All right. And ye shall observe the feast of unleavened bread. For in this selfsame day have I brought your armies out of the land of Egypt. Therefore ye shall observe this day in your generations by an ordinance forever. You see that right there? So we're supposed to remember this, that God did for us forever. All right? In the first month, on the 14th day of the month at even, ye shall eat unleavened bread, until the 21st day of the month at even. You see that right there? So for a week straight, all right, for a week straight, we eat unleavened bread, and we get out all the leaven, right? So there's those two things, all right? You have to eat bread that is unleavened for each day of those 7 days, but you also cannot eat any leavened bread for those 7 days, all right? 7 days shall there be no leaven found in your houses. For whosoever eateth that which is leavened, even that soul shall be cut off from the congregation of Israel, whether he be a stranger or born in the land. He said right there, so it's one law applies to both. All right. Ye shall eat nothing leavened. In all your habitations shall ye eat unleavened bread. And he's reiterating this because it's important. He said, look, eat nothing that has leavening in it. All right. You have leavening agents, and I'll post a picture of that on the Facebook page. You have leavening agents like yeast is the big one, baking soda, baking powder, another two that are big in leavening. You have your what is this called? What is this called? Ammonium. Ammonium carbonate and ammonia bicarbonate, things like that. also are leavening agents. All right. Those are the big ones, though. Those are the big ones. Then Moses called for all the elders of Israel and said unto them, draw out and take you a lamb according to your families and kill the Passover. And ye shall take a bunch of hyssop and dip it in the blood that is in the basin, and strike the lintel and the two side posts with the blood that is in the basin. And none of you shall go out at the door of his house until the morning. You see that right there? So he's saying, look, cover your house with the blood of the lamb. For the Lord will pass through to smite the Egyptians. And when he seeth the blood upon the lintel and on the two side posts, the Lord will pass over the door and will not suffer the destroyer to come into your houses to smite you. You see right there, because there was some people may call the angel of death, but in this case it's called the destroyer. All right. The destroyer was coming through and just killing everybody that didn't have the blood on the doorpost. And the blood on the doorpost signified, okay, they're good. They got the blood of the lamb, they're good. All right, we'll pass over them. That's why it's called the Passover, because the Lord passed over us and showed us mercy where he killed all the firstborn of Egypt. All right. And ye shall observe this thing for an ordinance to thee and to thy sons forever. You see that right there? Forever. Keep the Passover forever. And it shall come to pass when you be come to the land which the Lord will give you, according as he hath promised, that ye shall keep this service. You see right there, keep the Passover even when you're in the land. And it shall come to pass when your children shall say unto you, what mean ye by this service? That ye shall say, it is the sacrifice of the Lord's Passover, who passed over the houses of the children of Israel in Egypt when he smote the Egyptians and delivered our houses. And the people bowed their head and worshiped. You see it right there. So the people understood, look, we got to keep doing this forever, because it symbolizes the Lord's mercy on his people. All right. And the children of Israel went away and did as the Lord had commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. All right, so they listened. They listened. And it came to pass that at midnight the Lord smote all the firstborn of the land of Egypt, from the firstborn of Pharaoh that sat on his throne unto the firstborn of the captive that was in the dungeon, and all the firstborn of cattle. You see right there? So again, the cows wasn't even safe. Everything that was first, all the firstborns, God claimed as his that night. All right. And Pharaoh rose up in the night, he and all his servants, and all the Egyptians, and there was a great cry in Egypt, for there was not a house wherein there was not one dead. You see that right there? So everybody was affected by this. Like I said, all the way from Pharaoh to the ones that's in the dungeon. It don't matter. They were all affected. All right. And he called for Moses and Aaron by night and said, rise up and get you forth from among my people, both ye and the children of Israel, and go serve the Lord as ye have said. So Pharaoh's like, this is too much. Get out of here. Get out of my land. I know I've been fighting you this whole time. I hate that it came to this. Get out of my land. Also, take your flocks and your herds as ye have said, and be gone. Bless me also. He said, look, don't forget about me. Please bless me. This is terrible. These plagues that have come upon the land have ruined Egypt, have destroyed Egypt. Please bless me, but get out. And the Egyptians were urgent upon the people that they might send them out of the land in haste. For they said, we be all dead men. They said, look, we're going to, if anything else, if we don't push these people out of the land, their God is going to kill us all. All right. And the people took their dough before it was leavened, and their kneading troughs being bound up in their clothes upon their shoulders. Right. So that's historically why there was unleavened bread, because there was no time for it to leaven. All right. There was no time for the dough to rise. It was, again, eat in haste. Right. And the children of Israel did according to the word of Moses, and they borrowed of the Egyptians jewels of silver and jewels of gold and raiment. And the Lord gave the people favor in the sight of the Egyptians, so that they lent unto them such things as they required, and they spoiled the Egyptians, right? So as the people were leaving, they was like, well, what about all this stuff that we borrowed from you? They're like, we don't care. Go. Just take it, go. All right. And that's how they ended up spoiling the Egyptians. Not by force, but because of the wonders that God had showed. The people were willing, the people of Egypt, that is, the people of Egypt were willing to give away all their stuff if the Hebrews would just leave. All right. And the children of Israel journeyed from Ramses to Succoth, about 600,000 on foot that were men, beside the children, right? So just, and you get the number in the book of Numbers, the specific number of the men of war in Israel, from 20 and up. It's a little over 600,000. All right, but again, that's not counting the women and the children. And a mixed multitude went up also with them, and flocks and herds, even very much cattle, because Egypt was the America of its day. In the same way that you got all these different types of people came over here to America, it was similar in Egypt. Not to the extent that it is in America, but it was similar in Egypt. Plenty different races of people were in Egypt trying to, come up, trying to make money, trying to become wealthy. And they saw all this go down, and a lot of them went with the children of Israel. They said, why would we stay in Egypt? Egypt's been destroyed. Why should we stay here? And so they left with the children of Israel. All right. And they baked unleavened cakes of dough, which they had brought forth out of Egypt, for it was not leavened, because they were thrust out of Egypt and could not tarry. Neither had they prepared for themselves any victual. Right, so that's the historical reason why it's unleavened bread. But that's not what it represents. Remember, God had commanded it to be unleavened bread. So we'll get into what that represents later on in the New Testament. All right. Now the sojourning of the children of Israel who dwelt in Egypt was 430 years. And it came to pass at the end of the 430 years, even the selfsame day it came to pass, that all the hosts of the Lord went out from the land of Egypt. Right, so it was 430 years from the day that Jacob came down to dwell in Egypt. All right. It is a night to be much observed unto the Lord for bringing them out of the land of Egypt. This is that night of the Lord to be observed of all the children of Israel in their generations. You see that right there? So as long as we're still generating, as long as the children of Israel are still here, the 12 tribes, we got to keep the Passover. All right. And the Lord said unto Moses and Aaron, this is the ordinance of the Passover. There shall no stranger eat thereof. But every man's servant that is bought for money, when thou hast circumcised him, then shall he eat thereof. So when he says stranger, this is talking about the other nations, all right? He said, look, they can't eat it because no uncircumcised person can eat of the Passover, all right? A foreigner and a hired servant shall not eat thereof. You see that right there? So even an employee or somebody standing on your property at the time, he can't eat the Passover unless they get circumcised. In one house shall it be eaten. Thou shalt not carry forth aught of the flesh abroad out of the house. You see that right there? So you can't, you can't take leftovers, all right? Neither shall you break a bone thereof. You can't take it to go. All right. All the congregation of Israel shall keep it. And when a stranger shall sojourn with thee, and will keep the Passover to the Lord, let all his males be circumcised, and then let him come near and keep it. You see it right there? So if a stranger says, hey, look, I'm in the land, I want to partake in your customs, all right, get circumcised, and then we can talk about keeping the Passover. All right. And he shall be as one that is born in the land, for no uncircumcised person shall eat thereof. You see that right there? So if a stranger is in the land, one of the other nations is in the land and wants to keep the Passover, okay, get circumcised. You and all your house, all the males that live with you, everybody get circumcised. Y'all can eat the Passover now. One law shall be to him that is homeborn, and unto the stranger that sojourneth among you. You see right there? So he said, look, it's the same either way. He said it's one law. You got to be circumcised to keep the Passover. It is what it is. Thus did all the children of Israel, as the Lord commanded Moses and Aaron, so did they. And it came to pass the selfsame day that the Lord did bring the children of Israel out of the land of Egypt by their armies. All right, so I want to go ahead and read Exodus 13 as well. It goes, it reiterates a lot of things concerning the Passover. All right. Exodus 13, starting with verse 1. And the Lord spake unto Moses, saying, sanctify unto me all the firstborn. Whatsoever openeth the womb among the children of Israel, both a man and a beast, it is mine. You see that right there? So God straight up told you, look, that night in Egypt, when he came through to kill all the firstborn, the children of Israel got to survive, but that doesn't mean the firstborn aren't the Lord's. All right? The Lord came through and he claimed all the firstborn. He said, this is what you can do to prevent dying, but the firstborn still belong to me. I'm taking all the firstborn. All right. And Moses said unto the people, remember this day in which he came out from Egypt, out of the house of bondage, for by strength of hand the Lord brought you out from this place. There shall no leavened bread be eaten. This day came ye out in the month of Abib. So remember when it said the beginning of months? Abib. Let's search Google for Abib real quick. Let's see what Abib means. This is the beginning of months. All right. No, man, you see how Google be tripping? Abib month. Abib skincare. Get the hell out of here, man. Let's see. And see, it used to just tell you straight up. Google be changing stuff all the time, man. Abib meaning. Thank you. Abib meaning. And again, it says corresponding nearly to the Gregorian April. That lets you know it's around this time of year. But I'm trying to get the definition, the etymology of Abib, man. Here we go. Bible study tools. They efficient sometimes. It says, an ear of corn, the month of newly ripened grain. All right. So it's see, and even that's not right. It's the green ear of corn. All right. Hold on. Wait a minute. Give me 1 second. Let's see if I can find it here in a Bible dictionary. I don't know if you can see this very well, but this is the Zondervan Compact Bible Dictionary. This is a pretty good one. Let me look into this, see if we can find something on Abib. It just pretty much says the same thing that you find on Bible study tools. It says Abib, an ear of corn, the pre-exilic name for the first month of the year. And it gives reference in Exodus. After the exile, the name was changed to Nisan. It fell about the time of our March and early April. You see that right there? So the moon that is found in between March and April, it depends on the year. But the moon that is around that time, and this year it was at the end of March. It was at like March the 24th, something like that. But that's the month of Abib. All right. So that was all right. But even that didn't even say what it really is. It's the green ear of corn. It's the budding of plants. That's what Abib means. All right. But anyway, in the month of Abib, verse 5, and it shall be when the Lord shall bring thee into the land of the Canaanites and the Hittites and the Amorites, the Hivites and the Jebusites, which he sware unto thy fathers to give thee, a land flowing with milk and honey, that thou shalt keep this service in this month. All right. So he said, even when you get the land, you still got to keep the Passover. 7 days thou shalt eat unleavened bread. And in the seventh day shall be a feast to the Lord. Unleavened bread shall be eaten 7 days, and there shall no leavened bread be seen with thee. Neither shall there be leaven seen with thee in all thy quarters. He said, look, you got to eat the unleavened bread, and you got to remove the leavening out of your quarters. And thou shalt show thy son in that day, saying, this is done because of that which the Lord did unto me when I came forth out of Egypt. And you're supposed to teach your children, look, this is how we keep the Passover. All right. And it shall be for a sign unto thee upon thy hand, and for a memorial between thine eyes. So you work with your hands, and what's between your eyes? Your mind. All right. That the Lord's law may be in thy mouth. You see that right there? If you work with if you work, you're going to speak on what you work about or what you've been working on. All right. And if you're thinking about something, it's going to come out your mouth. All right. For with a strong hand hath the Lord brought thee out of Egypt. Thou shalt therefore keep this ordinance in his season from year to year. All right. So that goes into how to redeem the firstborn. I mean, hey, the firstborn, that's an interesting one. We're not going to get into that tonight as far as what happened with the firstborn and how God ended up sanctifying the firstborn. We'll get into that some other time. It's kind of deep. Not really. It's more historical, but you have to understand the context of all this to understand the firstborn thing. So we're not going to get into that. Let's go ahead and jump to Leviticus 23. Leviticus 23, starting with verse 4. All right. Here we go. These are the feasts of the Lord, even holy convocations, which he shall proclaim in their seasons. So these are the seasonal feasts. All right. In the 14th day of the first month at even is the Lord's Passover. And on the 15th day of the same month is the feast of unleavened bread unto the Lord. You see it right there. So the 14th day of the month at even is the same thing as the 15th day. All right. Again, evening and morning were the first day. From even to even is how we celebrate our days unto the Lord. All right. That's why Friday night is the Sabbath class, because that's when the Sabbath comes in. All right. Now, if I was to do a class on the during the day on Saturday, that would also be the Sabbath class. All right, because it's the same thing. 7 days you must eat unleavened bread. In the first day you shall make a holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord 7 days. In the 7th day is a holy convocation. You shall do no servile work therein. You see that right there. So again, if you can control your schedule, those are the days to take off. The first day, which would be Sunday going into Monday, and then the following week would be that Saturday night going into Sunday. All right, that's your 7 days. All right, so that's all I wanted right here in Leviticus 23, just explaining that this is a feast of the Lord. This is the first of the seasonal feasts, is the Passover. All right. So from there, let's get into 1 Esdras chapter 1. And you can read about this history in the Kings and the Chronicles, but I like this one here in 1 Esdras 1. It kind of just like sticks out, I suppose. So yeah, we'll keep that, but we'll start here in 1 Ezra 1 and start with verse 1. And Josiah, which is Josiah, held the feast of the Passover in Jerusalem unto his Lord. So this is hundreds, if not about 1,000 years later, is Josiah keeping the feast of the Passover. All right. Held the feast of the Passover in Jerusalem unto his Lord, and offered the Passover the 14th day of the first month, having set the priests according to their daily courses, being arrayed in long garments in the temple of the Lord. All right, so Josiah, he ordered everybody to get right. All right, he found a law at age 16 and started implementing all the changes that needed to be made because of the people that was in wickedness at the time. All right, so he set the priests according to their daily courses. And he spake unto the Levites, the holy ministers of Israel, that they should hallow themselves unto the Lord, to set the holy ark of the Lord in the house that King Solomon the son of David had built. And said, Ye shall no more bear the ark upon your shoulders. Now therefore serve the Lord your God, and minister unto his people Israel, and prepare you after your families and kindreds. All right, according as David the king of Israel prescribed, and according to the magnificence of Solomon his son, and standing in the temple according to the several dignity of the families of you the Levites, who minister in the presence of your brethren who minister in the presence of your brethren the children of Israel. Right, so Josiah is ordaining and establishing the orders of all the different Levites. You had some Levites doing this, others doing that, some taking the sacrifices, some, watching and being bouncers for the temple. Others were in charge of the incense and things like that. All right, some were singers. They all had different offices. All right. After the Passover, offer the Passover in order, and make ready the sacrifices of your brethren, and keep the Passover according to the commandment of the Lord, which was given unto Moses. And unto the people that was found there, Josiah gave 30,000 lambs and kids and 3,000 calves. You see that right there? So it's not just, you don't have to just eat the lamb and the bitter herbs and the unleavened bread. That's how a lot of people do it. They say, oh, you can only eat these three things at the Passover and you can't eat nothing else. That's not what happened in history. That's not what Josiah did at this Passover. He was offering up calves. All right. These things were given of the king's allowance, according as he promised to the people and to the priests and to the Levites. You see that right there? So these sacrifices were meant to go out for the Levites to eat and for the people. All right. And Hilkiah, Zechariah, and Silas, the governors of the temple, gave to the priests for the Passover, 2,600 sheep and 300 calves. You see that right there? So it's also beef being served. It's not just the lamb. It's beef being served as well. All right. And you may say, well, those are sacrifices. That's not what the people were eating. What do you think happened to the sacrifices? How do you think that meat, you think it all went to waste? Sometimes you would offer up a sacrifice and burn everything. That was for specific like sin offerings and things like that. For this free will offering, the people just eat. The people just eat the sacrifice food. It was just given to the Levites. That's how the sacrifices work. All right, people read about sacrifices in the Old Testament and they think it's something strange, something different. It's just a specific cookbook. It's a specific type of cooking instructions. That's all it is. All right. And again, it's very specific. You can't just like add your own twist to it because this is God's, how God likes to prepare stuff. But that it was still food given to the people to eat, given to the Levites specifically to eat. All right. And Jeconiah and Samiah and Nathaniel, his brother, and Asabias and Okiel and Joram, captains over thousands, gave to the Levites for the Passover 5,000 sheep and 700 calves. You see that right there? So again, the sheep and the calves. It wasn't just the lamb being served. It was all an array of dishes being served on the Passover. All right. And when these things were done, the priests and the Levites, having the unleavened bread, stood in very comely order according to the kindreds. So again, they had the unleavened bread, obviously. And according to the several dignities of the fathers before the people to offer to the Lord, as it is written in the book of Moses, and thus they did in the morning. And thus did they in the morning, And they roasted the Passover with fire, as appertaineth. As for the sacrifices, they sought them in brass pots and pans with a good savor. So you see right there, it's not even about you got to grill everything. You just have to grill the lamb. You just have to grill the Passover lamb, right? But it said, as for the sacrifices, the calves, and all the rest of the lamb, they ended up boiling it. All right, you can prepare things in different ways for your Passover feast. All right. It said with a good savor, and set them before all the people. And afterward they prepared for themselves and for the priests their brethren, the sons of Aaron. You see that right there? So they prepared for the people first, and then they cooked their own dishes and give them to the Levites and the priests. For the priests offered the fat until night, and the Levites prepared for themselves, and the priests their brethren, the sons of Aaron. The holy singers also, the sons of Asaph, were in their order, according to the appointment of David, to wit, Asaph, Zechariah, and Jeduthun, who was of the king's retinue. Moreover, the porters were at every gate. So the porters would be like your bouncers that I spoke of earlier. It was not lawful for any to go from his ordinary service, for the brethren of the Levites prepared for them. You see that right there? So they made them a plate and set it to the side, because they were still on security duty. Thus were the things that belonged to the sacrifices of the Lord accomplished in that day, that they might hold the Passover. You see that right there? So they did everything necessary to make sure the Passover was being kept, and offer sacrifices upon the altar of the Lord according to the commandment of King Josiah. Right? So they were cooking the Passover and then offering sacrifices as well. All right. So the children of Israel, which were present, held the Passover at that time and the feast of sweet bread 7 days. You see that right there? So they kept it a whole week. They kept it there a whole week, as the law said to do. And such Passover was not kept in Israel since the time of the prophet Samuel. You see that right there? So even David and Solomon in all their glory did not keep a Passover as wonderful as the King Josiah here. All right. Yea, all the kings of Israel held not such a Passover as Josiah, that the priests and the Levites and the Jews held with all Israel that were found dwelling at Jerusalem. Right, so that Jerusalem was, that Passover was lovely. All right. Yeah, and it says in the 18th year of the reign of Josiah was this Passover kept. Right, so this is when he was 26, I believe, because Josiah was crowned king at 8 years old. All right, so he found the truth at 16. All right, but it took him about 10 years before he could get the people in order to have a wonderful Passover like this. All right, so praise the Most High for that thing. Let's go to the New Testament to talk about some of this. All right, we speak about the unleavened bread. We speak about the unleavened bread. Give me, or rather, I'm going to go to Matthew 26. Matthew 26. And the Last Supper is what they call it here. The Last Supper, right? It says, now the first day of the Feast of Unleavened Bread, the disciples came to Jesus, saying unto him, where wilt thou that we prepare for thee to eat the Passover? You see that right there? So, the Passover was approaching, and they said, where are we going to keep the Passover? They knew they couldn't go with the General Assembly because they were all trying to kill Christ at this time. All right. And he said, go into the city to such a man and say unto him, the master saith, my time is at hand. I will keep the Passover at thy house with my disciples. And the disciples did as Jesus had appointed them. They made ready the Passover. Right. So they just kept it at a brother's house. He said, look, the Lord said he needs to keep the Passover here. I'm sure the brother felt honored, right, to hold the Passover at his house. Now, when the even was come, he sat down with the 12. And that as they did eat, he said, verily I say unto you, that one of you shall betray me. And they were exceeding sorrowful, and began every one of them to say unto him, Lord, is it I? And he answered and said, he that dippeth his hand with me in the dish, the same shall betray me. Right? So they were all bugging. They was like, dang, is that going to be me? Am I going to do that? The Son of Man goeth as it is written of him. But woe unto that man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It had been good for that man if he had not been born. Then Judas, which betrayed him, answered and said, Master, is it I? And he said unto him, Thou hast said. Right? He said, look, you said it. You said it. All right. But here's the point, though. And as they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed it and brake it and gave it to the disciples and said, take, eat. This is my body. You see that right there? So that's what the unleavened bread represented. Christ was letting you know from the jump, that's what it always represented. What the unleavened bread represented is that perfect body of Christ that had no blemish. All right? That had no leaven. All right. And he took the cup and gave thanks and gave it to them, saying, drink ye all of it. For this is the blood of the New Testament, which is shed for many for the remission of sins. You see that right there? So he said, look, this blood that you're drinking, this wine that you're drinking represents the blood of Christ. All right. But I say unto you, I will not drink henceforth of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drank it new with you in my Father's kingdom. Right. So Christ ain't had wine in a couple thousand years. So that's an interesting little tidbit there. He ain't had what he, because wine will take the edge off. Since he resurrected, he ain't trying to take the edge off. He's trying to keep everything in remembrance. All right, because he's gonna bring judgment to the world. And when they had sung a hymn, they went out into the Mount of Olives. All right, so they sung a little song. They sung a little psalm, and had a good time at the feast. And then we ain't gonna get into what happened next, but understand that Christ, he showed us what the unleavened bread represented. The unleavened bread represented his body. Always represented his body. All right. So I don't want to get 1 Corinthians yet. I'll get 1 Corinthians 11. I'll get 1 Corinthians 11 because Paul goes into detail about the body of the Lord here. All right. We'll get to the point, verse 23, where it says, for I have received of the Lord that which also I delivered unto you, that the Lord Jesus, the same night in which he was betrayed, took bread. And when he had given thanks, he brake it and said, take, eat. This is my body, which is broken for you. This do in remembrance of me. You see what I'm saying? So that bread was always the unleavened bread. All right. And the unleavened bread was always the body of Christ. All right. This ain't, your saltine crackers. That's not what this is. This ain't your wafer. All right. This is the unleavened bread. All right. After the same manner, also he took the cup when he had supped, saying, this cup is the New Testament in my blood. This do ye as oft as ye drink it in remembrance of me. You see that right there? So he said, look, do this often and use this to remember me, right? To remember the sacrifice of our Lord. All right. So, again, similar to how God told us to keep the Passover in remembrance of the salvation out of Egypt. For often as ye eat this bread and drink this cup, you do show the Lord's death till he come. You see that right there? So it's important to acknowledge that. But notice this next part though, verse 27. Wherefore, whosoever shall eat this bread and drink this cup of the Lord unworthily shall be guilty of the body and blood of the Lord. You see that right there? So God, once you partake of that unleavened bread and that wine, the Lord looks at you different. All right? He's looking at you saying, okay, now you have big shoes to fill. Now you understand your role. You have to serve the Lord. And when you start going off, he's going to judge you more harshly than he would somebody who had not partaken in that. All right? So it's certainly not something you don't want to just walk into the door into the truth and then start, eating the bread and drinking the cup. That's not wise. All right. Make sure that this is what you want to do. Make sure that this is the life that you want to live, that you want to walk. All right. But let a man examine himself, and so let him eat of that bread and drink of that cup. For he that eateth and drinketh unworthily eateth and drinketh damnation to himself, not discerning the Lord's body. Look, you can drink damnation to yourself doing this. All right. It's important to make sure that you're ready to measure up to the fullness of Christ before you start eating the bread and drinking the cup. For this cause, many are weak and sickly among you, and many sleep. So Paul said, look, many have died because they tried to eat the bread and drink the cup, but they did it unworthily. All right. So with that, we know that Christ offered up his body once and for all for our sins. I just want to touch on something real quick about how he is that lamb. All right. So this is is this what I want? Is this what I want? Yeah, we'll jump down to the end of this. All right. This is Hebrews 7. I'm going to start with verse 26. It says, for such a high priest became us, who is holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, and made higher than the heavens, who needeth not daily as those high priests to offer up sacrifice, first for his own sins, and then for the people's. For this he did once, when he offered up himself. You see that right there? So, the same way that lamb was found without blemish, you had to find a lamb without blemish to offer up. This high priest, who was holy, harmless, undefiled, separate from sinners, made higher than the heavens, he was without blemish. All right. And he doesn't need to offer up many sacrifices, first for his own sins and then for the people's. Why? Because he didn't have sin that he had to sacrifice for. All right. All the other high priests did. All right, but this he did once when he offered of himself. For the law maketh men high priests which have infirmity, but the word of the oath, which was since the law, maketh the Son who is consecrated forevermore. You see that right there? So, all the high priests before Christ, they had blemishes. They couldn't offer up themselves. All right. So, yeah. Let's keep reading on this in Hebrews 8, verse 1. Now, of the things which we have spoken, this is the sum. We have such a high priest who is set on the right hand of the throne of the majesty in the heavens, a minister of the sanctuary and of the true tabernacle, which the Lord pitched and not man. You see that right there? So, all the things, that's why it's important to read the Old Testament and to understand what it's talking about, because you wouldn't understand none of this if you didn't know about the tabernacle that was in the Old Testament, if you didn't understand the sacrifices that were in the Old Testament. All right. For every high priest is ordained to offer gifts and sacrifices. That was what we were reading in Josiah. All right. Wherefore, it is of necessity that this man have somewhat also to offer. For if he were on earth, he should not be a priest, seeing that there are priests that offer gifts according to the law. You see that right there? So if he was of the world, as in he did have sin, he would have nothing to offer. Because we already have, or at least at that time, we had sinful priests who could offer up sacrifices, all right, who serve unto the example and shadow of heavenly things. You see it right there? So all the sacrifices, all the lamb on the doorpost, it was all a shadow of heavenly things, all right, a shadow of things to come. As Moses was admonished of God when he was about to make the tabernacle. For, see, saith he, that thou make all things according to the pattern showed to thee in the mount. But now he obtained a more excellent ministry, by how much also he is the mediator of a better covenant, which was established upon better promises. You see that right there? So, I'll keep reading through verse 9. For if that first covenant had been faultless, then should no place have been sought for the second. So let's see what the fault in the first covenant was. All right, verse 8. For finding fault with them, he saith. So it wasn't about the covenant itself being bad. That's not what it was about. It was about the people that were in the covenant did not do what the covenant, did not hold up their end of the bargain. The Israelites, we did not hold up our end of the bargain. Behold, the days come, saith the Lord, when I will make a new covenant with the house of Israel and with the house of Judah. Right? So these two kingdoms, the house of Judah being your so-called blacks, the house of Israel being your so-called Latinos. All right. And of course, we know they're dispersed throughout the world. But you have the tribes of Joseph and the tribes of Judah coming back together. That's what the whole new covenant's about. Not according to the covenant that I made with their fathers in the day when I took them by the hand to lead them out of the land of Egypt. So it's not according to that same covenant that we just read about in Exodus 12 and 13. It's not according to that same covenant. Because they continued not in my covenant, and I regarded them not, saith the Lord. Because we didn't do what all the law said to do. So what does that mean? Does that mean we ain't got to do the Passover no more? It's not according to the same covenant. Does that mean we ain't got to do the Passover no more? Let's get 1 Corinthians 5. Let's see what Paul says on the subject. 1 Corinthians 5. Do I want to start with verse 1? Yeah, I'll start with verse 1. It says in 1 Corinthians 5 and 1, it is reported commonly that there is fornication among you, and such fornication as is not so much as named among the Gentiles, that one should have his father's wife. Right? So Paul is getting on these Israelites in Corinth. He's getting on the church that is in Corinth, saying, look, I've been hearing stories about the fornication that y'all got going on among you, and it's something that's even the heathen know is wrong. And that's you having sex with your stepmother, all right? And ye are puffed up, and you're proud, you're bragging about it. And I'm not rather mourned that he that hath done this deed might be taken away from among you. Y'all didn't even put him out to church. For I verily, as absent in body, but present in spirit, have judged already, as though I were present, concerning him that hath so done this deed. He said, look, I already come to a decision. I ain't even got to meet with y'all to come to a decision on this. In the name of our Lord Jesus Christ, when ye are gathered together, and my spirit with the power of our Lord Jesus Christ, to deliver such a one unto Satan for the destruction of the flesh, that the spirit may be saved in the day of the Lord Jesus. They say, get that sin out of the congregation. That's what Paul is telling them. Look, get that sin, get that brother in the midst of sin out of the congregation. All right? Verse 6, your glorying is not good. He said, look, what are y'all bragging about? Know ye not that a little leaven leaveneth the whole lump? So now he's getting into the leaven. All right. A little leaven leaveneth the whole lump. Purge out therefore the old leaven, that ye may be a new lump, as ye are unleavened. For even Christ, our Passover, is sacrificed for us. So he said, look, Christ was always that Passover lamb. Christ, our Passover, has sacrificed himself for us. All right. So get out all the old leaven, clean all the old leaven out of your house, and become that new lump. Therefore, let us keep the feast. You see that right there? So Paul said, look, we ain't doing away with the feast of Passover. We're going to keep the feast. But guess what? We're going to keep it the way that the scripture said to keep it. Not with old leaven, neither with the leaven of malice and wickedness. That's what the leaven that you're cleaning out of your house physically represents. It represents an effort towards God to clean out all your wickedness and malice, all your sin and hatred. That's what you're supposed to be cleaning out. Now you do that by, okay, I'm getting rid of this loaf of bread. That represents my lust, right? I'm getting rid of that. I'm getting out these, what else got leaven in? I'm getting out these, I'm getting out these waffles, whatever the case it may be. I'm getting out these waffles. That represents my envy. You know what I'm saying? So like cleaning out all this stuff, all this literal leaven represents you cleaning out your sin. All right. And there's a reason why in the world they say cleanliness is close to godliness. All right. Like I said, that's just a saying of the world. But you read about all the cleansing rituals, all the purification, sanctification rituals that the Levites did. Again, it was all symbolic. It's all symbolic, representing you cleansing yourself from the sin. Does that mean don't keep the feast? Of course not. That means that's how you get rid of your sin, is by keeping the feast. That's why he said, therefore, let us keep the feast, not with old leaven, neither with leaven of malice and wickedness, but with the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. All right. And again, people may say, oh, well, he's just speaking in metaphors there. He's not talking literal. He's speaking to Greeks. How would the Greek understand the metaphor of a Jew? You see what I'm saying? Because this is all metaphors based off the Old Testament scriptures. He knows he's speaking to Israelites here. All right, first and foremost. But also he's telling them, look, y'all ain't never been keeping the Passover. It's time to start. It's time to start keeping the Passover. Therefore, let us keep the feast. Remove all the literal leaven out of your house, but let that be symbolic of removing the sin and wickedness. Of removing the sin and malice, rather. The sin and hatred, the malice and wickedness. All right. With the unleavened bread of sincerity and truth. And we know that Christ is the way, the truth, and the life. All right. That's what his unleavened bread, that body of the Lord represents. All right.